Hey everybody, it's Gamer Grampz here, and today we are going to be reacting to a video from Raxx. If you're watching Diablo 4 content, you probably know who that is. I don't need to go into detail about it. Anyway, he released this 14.5-minute video entitled Let's Make Shred Druid Way Better in Diablo 4. And he has the best of intentions, but I have to hard disagree with almost everything he says, and I'd like to get into why. But instead of just sitting here like reacting to this, I'm going to react to it, but instead of us watching him talk and then me talking and pausing, etc., we're gonna do that, but then I'm gonna overlay that audio on top of the video of me leveling with Shred using poison that I just finished doing. It's tonight. It's August 5th. So that's why I want to get this out before the season starts tomorrow. So all of the footage you are seeing is not from the PTR. His feedback is after he played Shred on the PTR. And like I said, we had such different, completely like polar opposite experiences that I think it's important to digest this, but this is probably going to be a long one. So I will put a shorter version out where I just like literally let him talk and then show like footage of my build talking for itself. But yeah, anyway, again, I don't want to be negative. I was so blown away when I saw this video. I had to go figure out what actually happened because I had such a different experience. And so I found out why. First off, he just followed a guide from Maxroll. That's all. Like he just like literally step by step followed his guide, and then he was so close. He was literally like, hey guys, I know like rabies sucks in the end game, but like, do you even try it when you're leveling? And then his chat was like, no, it's garbage, and the rest is history. But anyways, let's let Raxx start cooking. And again, I'm not just trying to come across as an asshole here by any means. Like, I think even he could appreciate that once he sees evidence that it's different than the experience he had. I think he'd be the first one to say, fuck, I wish I would have tried that. I mean, especially for season 5. Everything is so much better than what you're going to be seeing on the screen right now, because this was, like I said, August 5th. Anyway, let's get into this.
Hi everyone, it's Raxx. Here comes the second video in a series I'd like to call Super Garbage Builds for Season 5, and let's try to make them great. So yesterday we did the Chain Lightning Sorcerer. Hopefully we can get some changes there. Now chat was begging me to do Shred Druid. They say that this build is absolutely in shambles. So I actually started at level 1 and I leveled up to 55 to get kind of the experience of what it feels like as an introductory to this class. And then we talked about the end game a lot. There were a lot of Druid mains there. Boiler stopped by, shout out to Boiler. He's the Druid lead for Maxroll. And then we made...
I just want to interject quickly. Again, try not to be the asshole, but I think Boiler phoned it in on this one. Anyway.
Made this 2-page document about Shred, and let's talk about it. So let's talk about what works about Shred. So the dashing of Shred, how you can keep moving around and hitting everything, that feels really good. And the skill itself looks cool. These are the only things out of any aspect that I could think of that actually work with this build. For me, the Shred Druid was definitely one of the worst leveling experiences I've ever had, any class, any build, for any era of Diablo, and I want to talk about why.
Now that's a pretty fucking strong statement. That's what, like, literally, this is where, when the first time I saw this, I was like, what the fuck? That just blew me away, and I had to go investigate. So again, I watched the first part of it, and then I skimmed through the rest of it to try and figure it out, and I know exactly why he feels the way he does, and so I will address his things point for point. I think he has a couple of good points in here, but most of this stuff is just completely wrong. And so again, with the utmost of respect, well, I do agree it feels good and looks cool, but anyway, it definitely works. There's definitely synergy, and you should definitely be playing with rabies.
So first of all, the damage that Shred doesn't work at all. The main ways that you buff damage is from a Stormclaw power. It gives you spread lightning damage when you crit, and then Blurred Beast, which is increased damage to poisoned enemies.
Okay, that right there is wrong. Well, it's half wrong. It's half right. Blurred Beast, definitely great aspect. It deals up, right now it deals up to 40x damage to poisoned enemies, and it's getting buffed to 55 for season 5. So it's getting buffed by 15% on the high end, and they're bringing up the low end too. But anyway, the other half though, the Stormclaw thing is not correct. And the reason being is there's 2 specific variants of Shred. They have some concept of some lightning crap that doesn't work, and Stormclaw is like the central focus to that. I do not use Stormclaw. I never will use Stormclaw. And if you do, in my opinion, you're playing Shred wrong. Because they have like the concept in their head, but they fucked it up and it just doesn't work. And basically he was playing with Stormclaw. Like that's half the problem right there.
So Stormclaw is actually barely noticeable. And that's probably because in the early game you have very bad crit, but in the end game it gets better. And if you just compare what it can do compared to, I don't know, anything else in the game, anything. Blizzard Sorcerer, Dust Devil Barb, even Firewall Sorcerer, a Victimize or a Shadow Imbue Rogue, even a Pulverized Druid. Same class, different build. A Minion Necro, a Blood Surge Necro, a Corpse Explosion Necro. Anything. Everything outclasses it in terms of AoE, and it requires a legendary power for you to even have this. Then you go to...
Okay, so agree with everything he said there. Stormclaw fucking sucks. Don't take it. Do not take it. All right. So in season 5, the aspects that you want to be running are the aspect of Changeling's Debt, the aspect of Blurred Beast, that's 2. Unsatiated aspect is 3. Aspect of Retaliation is 4. And the 5th one is kind of open. If you really want to see like this cool like chain reaction poison explosion, your whole screen just being fucking covered in everything blowing up, crazy AoE, go with Aspect of Inevitable Fate. That's the one I highly recommend. The second one, it's a close second, is Aspect of the Alpha. It actually feels really, really good. Again, I think Inevitable Fate will be better, and it's just so fun. I can't even begin to express to you how fun it actually is. I was super excited before Diablo came out, and freaking I was looking forward to the Werewolf, because I don't like Druids. If I want to play a shitty Sorcerer, I would play the Sorcerer class. I mean, it's getting buffed for season 5, but let's just not get in. Anyway, I just don't like slow, clunky, boring play, and so when the game came out and I tried Shred, it obviously was dog shit and I never touched it again. In hindsight, I wish I went back sooner than I did, because I only went back after I tried it on the PTR, and then I was like, oh well, I need to hammer out my build so I'm ready. And so since then I've been practicing like in season 4, and that's how I stumbled across the build that you're seeing on the screen right now.
Single target, and Envenom is one of the passives, thinks it gives you multiplicative damage to your critical multiplicative critical strike damage.
It does. It gives you 10x multiplicative crit damage per point into it, which you can get 3 if you don't have it on an amulet.
And then Unsatiated is another one of the legendary powers. They feel very clunky to keep up, not very noticeable in the early game.
Okay, I completely disagree with that, and I know why he said that. Okay, he said that because he's not using poison. All of these things synergize together and they all feed into each other. So if you're not playing poison, it's not going to work properly and it's going to feel underwhelming. Think about it this way. Look back on the ball lightning build, right? Like the first season when it was like, holy shit, before they nerfed it and brought it back in line. It would be like, hey, I'm going to test out the ball lightning build, but I'm not going to do it with the orbital aspect. I'm just going to do everything else, but not do orbital. It just doesn't pack the same punch. And so that's the problem that he's running into.
You don't have great resources. You have to use your generator all the time.
You do have great resources. Basically from like level 15 to 20 on, you basically have permanent spirit, almost permanent. Up until that point, yeah, you do have to swing claw quite a bit, but then it significantly gets reduced. The problem that he's having with Unsatiated is that he's not killing fast enough, and he's not killing fast enough because he's missing like 110x damage from not using Aspect of the Changeling's Debt, which is strictly poison based.
And then it's pretty reliant on poisoning, which you have to get from Toxic Claws or Poison Creeper or Rabies, but nobody takes Rabies. We're going to talk about that in a second. Or you have to get legendary powers for your werewolves to spread Rabies.
That's that Aspect of the Alpha I was talking about, and it is a nice choice, but it's not necessary. Even in season 4, I fucked around so much trying to figure out the build, like what felt the best, that like things that you can try that I would suggest that actually still feel good, that aren't that. You can go with Aspect of the Elements, the one that like is like the convention of elements from Diablo 3, because it cycles between the various element damages buffs too, and one of them is physical, which is your Shred, and the other one is poison, which is your Rabies. So it literally boosts you that permanently because it's one or the other is always being affected, right? But again, that obviously is a weaker choice compared to just straight multiplicative damage all the time from like retaliation, etc. But yeah, other than that, accelerating aspect is nice. Another nice one. It gives you like basically 25% attack speed every time you crit, which with lupine ferocity you're doing all the time.
And then even when you get these things activated, it's very underwhelming. I had the hardest time clearing the capstone. I had the hardest time clearing killing the curator using this versus using anything else.
Yeah, those, like the curator and Elias are both easy fights. Very, very easy fights.
Your early game resources are a big problem, as we kind of alluded to earlier. You run out of spirit instantly, and you won't have access to Umbral right away. It takes forever to get your spirit boons going.
I don't even use Umbral. The thing is, when you're using the rabies, and then with all the other multiplicative damage that I've mentioned, you're killing things so fast that you just have permanent spirit. I can't explain it any other way than that.
You're not going to have good rolls on your gear. The tempering sucks early game.
I love the tempering personally. He's going to get into what he's talking about, and I actually agree with the complaints he makes, but I personally don't give a shit because I don't use them. Temper druid movement on your boots and go for the digigate skill. It gives you plus ranks to the digigate thing, where it literally ends up being double the movement speed, the max movement speed bonus you can get for other stuff. You just fly. Oh, it's awesome. And then in season 5 too, they're adding in the tempering manuals that gives you crit damage. It's just gonna be obscene.
You just can't continue shredding, and you consistently lose this legendary power, assuming that you've even found it.
Okay, again, asterisk here, you unlock it from a dungeon, so it has nothing to do with assuming you even find it.
The resources are a problem. Your defenses are a big problem, and honestly, the reason why your defenses are a problem is because it requires you to get in the middle and you don't have any damage.
I 100% agree with this, because he's completely accurate. You are always in the middle with this build, always, and you're just slaughtering shit. It's just dying left, right, and center. But if you weren't killing things and slaughtering it left, right, and center, which you will be if you play the poison version, but if you weren't, which he wasn't, holy fuck would it feel painful. Like, I'd rather jump off a bridge than follow the guide and play the way that he did.
So I dive into the middle, shred, teleporting around. The monsters are still alive. If I don't get out immediately, I'm gonna die. And then early game, Poison Creeper seems to vastly outdamage Shred, and in order to use Poison Creeper, you also have to dive into the middle. So I'm always in the middle, everything is not dying very quickly, and it puts me in super dangerous situations.
Again, if he was using the poison variant and the aspects that are directly tied to that, not to mention using clarity, he wouldn't have that issue.
For that reason, my defenses felt bad. The legendary powers, as we kind of stated above, Blurred Beast, Stormclaw, they're very underwhelming. They probably feel a lot better when you have all of your powers later on in the game, but that doesn't help most people who don't get Super VAR very quickly when you're playing Diablo 4.
I would go as far as saying this build feels good, like good at level 15, like really good at 25, and by 35, you're fucking laughing and off to the races.
Here's another kind of Diablo.
Before he gets into this is my one really negative thing I have to say about him and about this particular thing. He went on this huge rant, which again, it was based on his experiences, which I understand completely because I went and fucking watched his experience. Like, I watched his experiences. I get it. I totally get it. However, he didn't fucking try rabies. And that's the part that bothers me, because I understand that he wrote this based on his feedback he received from his chat, but he really shouldn't put his stamp of approval on it unless he put his own hands on it, in my personal opinion. And so this is the one negative thing I have to say, is that it completely synergizes well with rabies, especially when it's worked in conjunction with clarity, which is in your skill tree, and that's the way it's fucking built to play. But anyway, again, I'm trying not to get negative, so with respect, there's very good synergy with rabies, and I think if he would have tried it, he would have been singing a different tune.
For tragedy is it has bad synergy with rabies, in that a lot of people don't even take rabies, at least while leveling up. In the Diablo 4 alpha, which almost nobody saw, it was like a closed alpha, rabies was godly. And it was so godly that Blizzard was afraid, and they nerfed it for the beta, and rabies has never been the same since. I think it's gotten a lot of buffs since then, and it's still far away from what it used to be. And we need a much better synergy here. Like, this is the build where we should be super excited to take rabies and use rabies, but that's just not what happens. So we need it to be far more lucrative and synergize much better than what it currently does. Then the Shred upgrades offer practically zero choice. Okay, so if we look at Shred here and go up to it, look at this upgrade. Shred's second and third attacks also perform a dash, and then we get critical strike damage increased by 30%. Well, there is pretty much no universe, unless you're making like an Uber boss build where you don't need to dash at all, but maybe still even in the Uber boss builds, where you could give up this dash.
Hold on, I'm trying to stop this right at
Look
exactly
at this
the right
upgrade.
time. Oh fuck, it was too quick. All right, we'll just leave it here. I was trying to get it stopped on that poison part, but here, I can enlighten you. This is what they were thinking, and it needs to be changed now. The idea that he's about to say is great. It's amazing. I highly recommend they do it, and I agree with him. However, I will explain the other side of the coin. The reason that they have that other variant in there, it's because it was introduced before they introduced the virulent aspect. So I'm not sure when that came into the game, but it was recently. Like it was either season 4 or season 3. It wasn't in the base game by any means. It's not an old aspect that was originally there. And so that aspect completely changes the way that it plays, because it resets your rabies and basically allows you to spam it, because it reduces it by 0.8 seconds per enemy it spreads to, and that reduction is tripled for elites. It literally allows you to basically spam it. And so the thought process behind them having that poison variant there was because rabies has a high cooldown originally. Like it's a 12-second cooldown. Like you don't get to use it very often. So they want to give you a consistent source to apply the poison in order to trigger the 110x multiplicative damage that aspect of Changeling's Debt provides you. Because if you don't have the enemy poisoned, you are not going to be able to use that 110x% damage increase, which is clearly going to leave you feeling a little underwhelmed. And so that's what they were trying to do. But now that that aspect is in the game, you can cast rabies so often that this is completely irrelevant, the other node, until you get the virulent aspect. But up until you get that aspect, I would actually recommend that you go with that other one, because not only does it do more damage, but then it allows you to be consistently proccing your 110x multiplicative from Changeling Debt.
Build where you don't need to dash at all, but maybe still even in the Uber boss builds where you could give up this dash. This is pretty much the thing that makes it feel really good. So losing the dash is just unthinkable in this build.
One quick thing, you still have a dash. Technically, you're losing 2 of 3. You still do get that first one, which is like you could literally go across half the screen with it. So like it still doesn't feel completely horrible. It's just not like you're like ninja jujitsu like crazy flying all over the place, but it's leap across half the screen and then like wham bam bam everything dies, then leap again, rather than just like consistently fucking shredding, I guess. Anyway,
So why is it a choice? It doesn't make sense that it's a choice. It needs to be built into the actual skill. I think that's kind of a no-brainer. So now let's get into a million ideas on how we can make Shred better. Now, again, these ideas are purposely very high level because Blizzard is going to choose how they actually want to change things and implement them. It doesn't do me any good to drill down with my little magnifying glass and give a super specific solution, because Blizzard likes to come up with their own answers. But let's talk high level about some things. The dash upgrade should not be a choice. It should be built into Shred, because you're never going to play Shred without it. That could open up another upgrade for Shred, which could be very interesting, and they could use that option to solve some of Shred's problems. I think you move the dash upgrade just into base Shred. This to me is kind of a no-brainer. So you already give us a power called Storm Claw, which makes Shred AoE and do lightning damage. But you want to know what they didn't put in it? They didn't make Shred a storm skill when it does that. And if they had done that, it would open up a lot of avenues for Shred. Now, they don't have to do this. Some druids commented, well, everything turns into a storm skill and it opens up all these possibilities, and I'm sick of that solution. That's fair. But you already have a power that makes it do AoE lightning damage, and you didn't make it a storm skill. So this is such a low-hanging fruit that could help Shred. And if not, maybe you could redesign Stormclaw to do bleeding stuff or some other thing. But the fact that you made it do lightning damage without making it a storm skill is very strange. As we said earlier, Shred needs to synergize far better with rabies.
Okay, again, I've been over this, so I'm gonna try not to beat the dead horse.
You might not believe me, but there was a universe when rabies was godly. We need to make rabies great again. One of the best things Blizzard could do is go back and look at the alpha and look what rabies used to do. Shred is so far behind that I think a massive buff here is in order. Improve the Shred legendary powers. When we took things like Blurred Beast or Stormclaw, they're not nearly as impactful as they should be. Stormclaw is the big AoE thing. Everything in the game that I can think of has better AoE. Everything. So it's just not impactful enough at all. Here's another one that I think is a no-brainer. The Druid Tempers need help. The shape-shifting finesse has 6 choices. You're never going to get what you want, and then you have to get another temper in World Tier 4. I think you have to break this up into 2. This is, it's actually crazy. There's no way it can stay like this.
See, I agree with what he's saying here. I just really don't give a shit about it because I don't play Druid. I only want to play Shred Druid. And as a Shred Druid player, I don't give a fuck about shape-shifting finesse. What I want is offensive. You're gonna go for their new tempering manual that they're adding into Season 5. It's like worldly finesse. The one with like vulnerable damage and overpowered damage, blah, 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 blah. We want crit damage in a perfect world, but if you get stuck with vulnerable damage, it's like, but you really, really want that crit damage. And then on the other side, the weapon part of it, like, because that's what you do, right? You go weapon and offensive. So the weapon part on your actual weapon, you want to go for, I don't know the name of the manuals off the top of my head, but the one, it gives you 3 choices. It's lacerate duration, rabies duration, and then Shred critical chance. You'd be like really, really wanting rabies duration. You'd be okay with lacerate duration. And if you get the crit chance for Shred, you're kind of like, oh fuck. But again, those are your targets for that. And for your rings, it's the same offensive thing I already just mentioned. And you would be going with companion efficiency, and you would be trying to get wolf. But because you use all 3, you don't really care whether it's companion, poison, or ravens. But wolf is ideal because it has the shortest cooldown to begin with, and it also has the biggest range of impact to roll on your temper.
Another thing is the other option for Shred is increased crit chance, which is very good, especially it's very good for a low level druid. But what I keep hearing from all the endgame druids is crit chance is actually not what you need in the endgame. And then it would be a much higher damage increase.
You actually don't even need it in the early game. You should be speccing for lucky hit chance, crit damage, and attack speed.
If they could get stuff like some of the other builds get, like chance for Shred to cast twice, or just increasing its damage, because druids do have a lot of access to crit chance, which will help them with things like Envenom. So we need another look at the druid tempers. It's in big trouble. Here's a buff that I think Blizzard should do that will help every druid build. So let's understand something. Druids currently are the worst leveling class. They're the slowest. I have 25 level 100s this season. I've been speedrunning them a lot. I think Druid is the slowest.
Maybe you should have speedrun rabies Shred Druid. Just a thought. No, that's just me being an asshole. I'm joking. But really though, he'd be singing a different tune had he actually made one of those 25s a rabies poison druid. And then I'd be happy because I wouldn't have had to stumble upon it myself. I would have learned it from him and been playing it sooner rather than just the last week of fucking the season here.
So they're the slowest, and they could use that. They could use help in the early game. And they have, by far, the worst class quest. You have to go do an entire stronghold. Then you have to do a quest chain, which takes you out. And then you have to do a second thing. And then you have to acquire.
To be fair here, the stronghold takes between 3, maximum 4 minutes to clear, and the quest is even shorter than, for instance, like I play Necro. It's the quest itself is faster than the Necro quest. It's faster than the Barbarian quest. It's faster than the Rogue quest. I think the Sorcerer is faster than the Druid, but it's either fastest or second fastest if you just look at the actual spirit questing. And then as far, I'll actually let him cook. Never mind.
Acquire 400 spirit offerings. I just leveled up 1 to 55, and I didn't actually level up that fast because I was purposely trying to use just Shred here. And look how many I have. Okay, I do have enough. I did finally get 400 at level 55.
Okay, and so again, I completely disagree with this. I think it's perfectly fine the way it is. For one, you don't wait until you like pop all 400. Specifically for Shred, you literally get 25 given to you for completing the spirit quest. You can go there with 0 and come away with the only one we really care about, which is Pack Leader. He made this judgment after leveling with his experience gain on from the seasonal boon, like for the Urn of Aggression or whatever it's called. That changes things because the drop rate they have set for the spirit boons is tailored to when you're actually leveling up without experience. So if you actually go back and you reset your Urn of Aggressions to 0, and then you level with your Druid and you just put the first one on at 28 and the second one at 44 and the third one at 49 and 53, before you'll have it way before then. And not to mention, you only need to put on a couple at a time to really get a good difference. Like 25 is for Pack Leader, 50 more gives you 20% max health, 75 more than that gives you 15% damage reduction, even 50 total gives you Pack Leader, which we want, and then 10% crit chance. They are very powerful since they reworked them, and you just unlock them as you go. My personal takeaway though, my complaint is whoever designed it is so fucking stupid that I cannot be polite. You have to physically go back okay, I can deal with the stronghold, I can deal with the quest, I can deal with like the loading screen to teleport to the waypoint, and then the fake loading screen when you're climbing down the stairs, and the second fake loading screen when you're climbing down the other stairs the first time. But dear Jesus, as a Necro player, it hurts my soul that every time after that initial time down, you have to physically fucking go back. Like, you don't have to do that for the Necro. We get our fucking Book of the Dead. You don't have to do that as a sorcerer. Once you enable your freaking enchantments, you have them enabled and you can pick and choose, switch them out, whatever you want. But the Druid gets punished. I have to physically go back. Now say hypothetically that it didn't bother me and I just waited until I was like maxed out to go back and like just do it all at once, right? This blows my mind even more. You then have to fucking like, so say I go with the deer, I like 15% damage reduction and the 15% movement speed and impairment reduction. So I spirit bond the deer, that's what I go with. But then you know what, I get a bunch of defensive shit and I'm thinking, hey, you know what, maybe I don't need that 15% damage reduction. I'd rather go for crit damage and attack speed from the eagle. Hey, that sounds good. Press Shift C, open up your thing. Oh wait, no, you gotta physically fucking go back again every time you want to adjust which one you bond to. Oh my god, like whoever thought that was freaking good game design should just freaking, oh, I'll leave that unsaid.
So I essentially completed my class quest maybe a little bit earlier than 55. It just takes way too long to do all of this. So since they just buffed spirit boons, and since the spirit boons would have really helped me, I think they should change the spirit offerings to 50 instead of 100 and cut it in half. That way people can get those spirit boons much earlier and it will help all Druid leveling builds. It doesn't change anything in the end game. You already have all the spirit boons. This is just to help low-level druids. The final thing that they could look at is lupine ferocity. So they just buff this. They just buff this to be every third werewolf hit critically strikes, and it does 70% increased damage and 140 against injured enemies.
I'm going to interrupt him before he goes because I'm going to take the first shot at this. This is perfect the way it is. Perfect. Okay, so every third werewolf skill hit, and again, it's not every third werewolf skill critically strikes. It's every third werewolf skill hit critically strikes, which means when you're using Shred, there's 3 strikes. they're buffing them all. So the third one in Shred is the big boy damage. So all of a sudden, the biggest damage swing of Shred is now guaranteed to be a critical strike, and the base damage that's being critically that's critically striking and is being multiplied now gets another 70x damage to the base hit that's then triggered by your critically strike. And again, this is doubled against injured enemies. It's fucking crazy good. And like, you literally build Shred differently. You get lupine ferocity here, you get 20% crit from your poison creeper, you get 8% from your ravens, then you're using clarity, which is like 45% crit chance there if you have 3, otherwise it's 2. Like, you're basically almost never using 2 at the same time. As if that wasn't good enough, they added clarity to the list of skills you can get plus ranks to on amulets for season 5, which means it's going to go from reading in the end game specifically, I'm talking about, right? In the early game it's 3, which means it's 15x and stacking up to 45. But in the end game, you can get a greater affix for +4 clarity on your amulet, then masterwork it to +7 for a total of +10, which would then change the skill to read. Casting a companion skill gives your next core or RAS skill, aka Shred or Rabies, 50x damage, and it has a 50% chance to critical strike, and that stacks to 150. So if you cast 2 companions, which, like I said, is very easy to do, you're almost always doing 2 of them at a time, you're literally guaranteed to crit there. So what you do is, like, fuck it, I'm not even gonna get into it here. I'll do a video actually showing how to fucking play it properly, like just a straight up short skill showcase of this is how you fucking trigger it properly. Anyway, again, I'm very happy with the way it is. I'm gonna let him say his bit and I'll come in at the end because of that, but then I'm gonna wrap this up. It's already getting outrageously long.
But if ever you were going to take this passive, it's essentially probably going to be on Druid. And lupine ferocity is pretty good in the early game when your crit chance sucks. But in the later game, people usually take Ursine Strength for 30% increased damage all the time. Or the very powerful Bestial Rampage for 30% attack speed and 50% increased damage. Kind of the annoying thing about Bestial Rampage is it requires you to shapeshift properly, so some people don't like that. But both of these, I think, still have a higher output than the buffed version of Lupine Ferocity. If we're not going to take Lupine Ferocity on the endgame Shred build, I don't know when we ever will. So what could we do about that? Notice the final part of it. You do 140% increased damage against injured enemies. Well, that's pretty much the worst case scenario we could have hoped for.
No, that's actually the best case scenario. Literally what he's about to suggest would fucking be such a hard nerf to it by the time you cast your Rabies, which is A, boosted from your unsatiated aspect because you always cast them above 50, and then B, it's further multiplied by your aspect of Changeling Debt, which is then further multiplied by your clarity that is inside your skill tree, which adds multiplicative damage. 1 cast of Rabies and nothing is healthy on the screen. 0. Like, there's nothing healthy there. Trust me. Like, you would literally be kicking it in the nuts if you do what he's about to suggest, other than when he says to give it both injured and healthy, which, hey, if you want to go that route, Blizzard, by all means, I will take it. But anyway.
First of all, they could change it to something completely different, like vulnerable enemies. But if they wanted to keep the same idea, you could switch it to doing the damage to healthy enemies instead. That way, when you walk in and you get that third hit in the crit, it might just blow up the whole pack, instead of waiting for them to get hurt and then luckily hitting the damage to execute them. But when they're that low, the damage might have been enough to kill them anyway. So even switching that to healthy would be a big buff. Or if you really want to get frisky, actually change it to both. Injured and healthy might make it even better, and that's the kind of buff that Lupine Ferocity might need to actually make people take it over the other 2 passives. So do I think if Blizzard makes every single one of these changes that Shred is going to be the greatest build ever? Well, I guess it would depend on how they improve the legendary powers. I guess it would depend. I guess maybe, but probably not. But I think this would be an excellent starting point. I think everyone should get the dash. I think it should be a storm skill, opens up a lot of build ideas. We need to be able to use Rabies much better. The powers need to be improved. The tempers suck. How many of you guys bricked your Druid tempers? last season. I bet tons of you. Spirit boons would help the early game, and lupine ferocity, it'd be cool if we actually took it. So this has been my little workshop day 2. Yesterday we tried to fix Chain Lightning Sorcerer. Today we're trying to fix Shred Druid. We'll send this over to Blizzard. What do all of you Druid mains think out there? Do you think that these would be good changes for Shred? I would be very interested to hear what your ideas are.
Careful what you wish for. No, I'm kidding. Like I said, I tried to be constructive in this and not to be an asshole. Like, I hope it's not taken the wrong way by any means. Not that a whole bunch of people are gonna see it, but still. Anyway, the point being is that I'm not a Druid main, but I literally was so excited to try Flurry Rogue that, like, when I saw the changes to Shred, I was like, okay, I'll quickly check it out, see how it feels, and then go play Flurry. Because that's what I was actually excited about. And it felt so good and was so awesome that I literally played Shred the entire PTR. I didn't even try Flurry Rogue yet, and that's why I'm gonna be using my season start cash on Flurry Rogue, but I'm actually starting with Shred. But yeah, anyway, if you're still here, I commend you. Do me a favor, leave a like on the video if you would. But are you excited to try it out? Did you try it out in the PTR? What are your thoughts? Do you think I'm an idiot? Well, I mean, that's beside the point. I am, but either way, looking forward to seeing this in action tomorrow and being able to actually give some proof rather than just ramble on and show you footage from season 4, which you've been watching. But anyway, I'm just going to shut up now, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.